Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Amani Reads and Reviews. Today is going to be a very long video because it is my first movie review. So I really wanted to make sure that I was giving you all of the information in this movie. So if you guys want to watch it yourselves, you may want to do so. So I'll go ahead and put my screen up so you guys can know what I'm reviewing for today. And we will be reviewing the movie The Invitation. So today we're going to discuss the character analysis. I'm going to do a background of the movie events. We're going to talk about what the movie is about. We're going to do the symbolism and the clues throughout the movie, and then I'll talk about my ratings and my likes and dislikes about this movie. So, the character analysis. The first and the main character, Evie, is a talented artist. She does a lot of sculpting and painting, and she does a lot of great work. She is looking for acceptance and belonging. She chooses to live a more realistic lifestyle than a fairy tale type of lifestyle. She's stronger than what she thinks, and she's extremely strong willed and intelligent, and she can stand her own ground. Now we have Walt. He is a passionate guy. He's very mysterious. He has a really big secret, and he's really handsome. He is a bit too straightforward and demanding. He is a hope romantic, but just really dark. He's very suave, and he got that old money. Um, he wants to please people, and he cares a lot about people, but he also cares a little way bit more about power and his image. Now we have Oliver. Oliver is very charming. He is Evie's he's Evie's cousin from England. He is very straightforward and he's very well dressed. Now we have Lucy and Victoria. Lucy is a very sweet lady. She is kind and she wants to make sure that Evie feels at home when she is at the DeVille Manor. That you guys are going to know what's going on a little later in this presentation. She's often bullied by Victoria, but we'll see that she kind of gains her voice towards the end of the movie. Victoria is very powerful and she's mean and unwelcoming to Evie. She plays mind tricks on Evie and she wants Walt to herself, which you guys will also understand what I'm talking about later on in this presentation. Now, the butler, I forgot this guy's name, but he is the butler throughout this presentation to me. He is deeply evil. He knows all of everything what's going on in that household, and because he is so what do they call it? He's loyal to Walter. He doesn't care what's going on as long as he is doing his part by protecting his lord, right? He immediately sees Evie and is just disgusted by her for some reason. He's just really racist and this classist throughout this movie. He basically says that Evie's worth nothing, and yeah, that's about it. Now we have Mrs. Slit. She is a sweet lady. She is actually a huge part in this movie that, we will learn more about her throughout this presentation, but she knows of the evil in this house and she really wants to protect Evie. She has a secret, but she can't really tell Evie right away. So she tries to help her throughout the movie just to keep her safe. She's just extremely worried about Evie's life and she tries to save her from evil throughout the movie. Now we have the maids 1 through 5. So there were 5 maids that kind of worked throughout the DeVille Manor that we all know about later on, but they were numbered 1 through 5, and a lot of them went to the upper room. We're going to say that because I don't want to say anything that's offensive. So yeah, they kind of play different roles throughout this movie where they're actually playing maids, but then they're also being feasted upon as well. So it's like a really strange thing about these maids. But Evie did make a huge connection with all the maids because she's seen them as people, as human, whereas the butler's seen them as just workers, and they're easy to kind of um easy to kind of like put down. Let's say that, right? So we're going to get into the background of this movie. So this movie takes place in 1925 in England, and they say Carfax because that's kind of the where the manor is. So Emily is Evie's late grandmother who married into the Duville family. She is married and she has a new life that comes with a big secret that she's not able to live with. So before this kind of happens, Emily, Evie's great grandmother, has an affair with a black footman and she gets pregnant. And this is kind of what creates Evie's bloodline. So, this man is, black or African, whatnot. And Evie's born or whatever. And we'll see that in the next slide. But because Emily was just so distraught about her new life, she decides to off herself. So she grabs this big, beautiful figurine of a veiled lady and she decides that she's gone. She doesn't want to do this anymore. So decades later, we see Evie, and this is when the movie starts to take place. So, what is this movie about? This is the present time. So, this movie follows the young and talented Evie who's working as a caterer with her best friend Grace. And they are at this fancy event, and it's full of these rich white folks, and they are launching this like type of DNA kit. So while Evie's working, she comes across many strange and weird people, and they're telling her to be quiet. This creepy guy gives her a $20 bill with his number on it and is giving her all these weird demands. So, in the center of the event, towards the kitchen, they have this picture of this very beautiful, dark skinned black woman with her hands covering her face with a yellow background. So, if you all see anything that is in red, that is symbolism that I'm going to discuss later on in this presentation. So, after the event, Evie and her best friend Grace are speaking about like crazy night that they had, and then Gracie kind of just lets them know like, hey, I snagged some goodie bags and they have DNA kits in it. So they went ahead and took the goodie bags, and while they were talking about their day and how they got hit on and how like these rich white people were like kind of mean and pushy, their boss comes in and he's this hefty guy. I think he's probably maybe Italian or Persian, but he is really like mean to the girls, and he's saying, look, there's plenty of women who would want this job, so y'all need to suck it up, basically what he said. So in the next scene, Evie is back at home, and it happens to be her birthday, I believe, only because she continues to play her late mother's message that is, her mother saying happy birthday to her and saying that how proud she is of her and she's a talented artist. And the mother just reminds Evie that she's stronger than she may thinks. So Evie starts sculpting and she's getting into her night routines, and she decides to take the DNA test from the catering event she worked on earlier that day. So immediately she comes across one of her cousins, her distant cousin Oliver from England. And Oliver is just extremely excited to meet Evie. He's very welcoming. He just really wants to meet her. And he decides, hey, let's go out for tea. So he invites her to lunch. So Evie gets off the computer and she starts talking to Grace about it. And Grace is just telling her, hey, watch your back. You don't know these people. Grace was pretty much trying to protect Evie, and I was getting like get out vibes from like Grace, because obviously when you look at Evie, you can clearly see that she's biracial, and she has a white side of the family and then that she never knew. So Grace just says, hey, leopards don't really change their spots. And honestly, throughout this movie, if you guys watch this for yourselves, you're going to see how powerful that line is, because that is so true. Like, that is a huge warning for, throughout this movie, what Grace said. So, the next day comes and Evie meets her cousin, and by first impressions, Evie is very much welcomed by him and loved by Oliver immediately, and he wants to know absolutely everything about Evie. And in return, Evie asks how she's related to the Alexander family. And Oliver just kind of mentions that basically the grandmother had an affair with a black footman. They had a baby, and that was a huge scandal back then for the Alexander family and their bloodline and everything. So after that conversation, that awkward conversation happens, Oliver just kind of mentions that, hey, we have a cousin who's getting married this weekend, and like everybody is really looking forward to meeting you. Do you want to come to England? So she said absolutely not at first, but then, Oliver kept pestering her, saying, everybody's just excited to meet you. And because Evie kind of has this strange thing about about wanting to be accepted and belong into a family because both her parents have passed away and she doesn't have any cousins, she don't have siblings. She just decides, hey, okay, I'll go to England and go to our cousin's wedding. So that's what she did. She was invited to a wedding. So Evie and Oliver arrive at the Duville Manor, and Evie is stunned at how beautiful the manor is. And she gets out of the car, she's looking around, and she mistakenly stumbles on one of the maids. And the maid, she is happening to hold a glass of, it's like drinking glasses, and they drop all on the floor. And Evie decides to help them get all the glasses up off of the floor. So the mean old brash or like harsh butler comes, and he is just looking at Evie and the maids and saying, get this up, you guys are causing a scene. He looks at Evie and just like quickly like changes his glance because he just feels like Evie is just like trash that shouldn't even be at the manor. So while Evie is trying to help the maids, she says something about the butler's kind of just really rude, and he's trying to help, and the butler isn't trying to hear what she's trying to say. So while this is going on, Walter Deville steps in between Evie and the butler and introduces himself. And Evie, and he says hi to Oliver because obviously he already knows Oliver. So automatically, Evie is kind of impressed by Walt. He tells her to call him Walt and not Walter. He is attractive, clearly, but that doesn't matter because she tells him exactly how she feels and how the butler was just extremely rude. And he does apologize on behalf of the butler. And he kind of tells her that his manner is her manner. And throughout this movie, this guy, Walt, he says stuff like this all the time. And it's like he's trying to like put it in her mind and like do this mind trick on her that like, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours, just to kind of like ease her to what we'll see later on in this movie, right? So afterward, Walter tells the butler to escort Evie to her suite where she meets Mrs. Swift, and that will be her maid while she's staying at the manor. While speaking to Mrs. Swift, Evie states that she gets her own maid, and then Mrs. Swift said if she has any questions or she needs anything, kind of let her know. So then Evie sees this painting of this beautiful young lady who is her grandmother, but she doesn't know that, right? So this painting is of this young lady. She's hanging in the room, and she just looks so sad and sombersome, like she does not want to be in a situation that she's in. And looking at the background story of Evie's grandmother, we clearly know what she's done so she doesn't have to live that life. So that Evie, she kind of mentions before Mrs. Swift leaves, she tells Evie she will help her with anything, and she needs just, kind of don't leave the room, I guess, in a way. And she's just, worried about Evie's safety. So let's see what else I want to talk about. Okay, so Evie, she goes on the phone with her best friend Grace. She tells Grace everything that happened thus far in the manor. She tells her about the butler. She tells her that she got her own maid. She says how beautiful this place is and blah 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 like that. Um, she also mentions obviously Walt and how attractive he is. She does mention that Walt is their age, right? So they obviously look like they're probably like 25 to about 28, because Grace and Evie definitely don't look over like that age. And then Walt doesn't either. So, you know, clearly we know that Walt is older. If you all have watched any type of like movie similar to this and you know, watch this presentation, you'll know clearly what I'm talking about. But she kind of goes on to say that Walt is this really successful guy and he's handsome and this and that and the third. Then she gets a knock on her door, and who is it? It is Walt, and he comes in and says, you know, sorry to her again, and says that, you know what, I want to get to know you better, and he says let's start over. So yeah, that was about it. So after Walt leaves, Evie decides to go jog around the manor. She sees a lot of different things around the manor, and she sees a random building that is an ice parlor from like the olden age before they had refrigerators. And she doesn't know this information, but I'm telling y'all now because this is kind of significant to the movie. So the morning comes, and I guess before I really talk about this, Evie also tells Grace that she has like some type of family reunion. So the morning comes, and Evie forgets that she has a family reunion, and she goes gets dressed, and she goes downstairs to the dining room where she meets all of the Alexanders, and they're just so happy and eager to meet her, and they're pleased that she finally decided to come to England. And her grandfather mentions this, which is really important to this movie, that there were so many boys, I thought we were done for it. Knowing the biggest secret why Evie is truly there, you know, the grandfather and all the men in the family know why Evie's truly there. And let's be real, um, when people of color do these DNS and they happen to know that they have like family of the other hues, and they may be successful, they may not, but they don't care to meet the, you know, the hue or the colored family members. And like, let's just be real, like, we know how history is, and at the end of the day, it's just at times things clash, and if this was not a movie, most likely these people would not even be interested in her. So, meanwhile, Evie and Oliver are speaking, and she asks if Walt is related to the Alexander family. And she's relieved to find out that he is definitely not. So, she's pretty much all game for him now, right? So, let's see what else I'm talking about. So, Evie kind of is really smitten with, you know, Walt and everything. So after her family reunion, she goes back to her suite to find this absolutely stunning, beautiful yellow or golden dress so she can wear to the ball later on that night. So Evie goes back to her room. She finds that dress that Walt gave her and a letter saying that she's invited to the Deauville ball later that night. The ball was really elegant and classy. Everyone who was entered, they were properly greeted. And if you guys watch Bridgerton, it was kind of giving those type of vibes. It was just absolutely stunning. I would love to go to a party like that, you know, minus the gory stuff. But yeah, Evie goes there and she just looks the part. She sees her cousin Oliver. They start to chit chat, and they got some champagne, and they start drinking. And then, you know, I don't know about alcohol because I do not drink. So I don't know if champagne is just like a name or if it's like just what they call bubbly in general. So I just said that because it was just classy and it was in a really nice glass or whatever. Anywho, so the butler now announces that Lucy and Victoria are now coming into the ball. So they immediately spot Evie and they start to chat with her. First impressions, Lucy is very kind and sweet and wants to know a lot about Evie. Victoria, on the other hand, is immediately taken back by Evie, and she thinks Evie is beautiful, but at the same time, she thinks she's just like beneath her, and she treats Evie as if she's beneath her. And because Evie's very, yeah, Victoria thinks Evie's kind of like a charity case. And Evie, because she's so strong-willed, she gives, Victoria that same energy. They're just kind of like catty, but in a classy way, which I like because you guys are at a ball. It ain't no point of like, riff-rapping over something that Evie clearly doesn't know about yet. So, Evie kind of leaves and, says her goodbyes and everything like that. And we go to the next scene or whatever. So Evie goes to get another drink and Lucy follows her and they begin to speak. So Lucy says very odd things, and she says very odd things throughout this movie, but she kind of wanted to know where Evie, where she's from. And Evie says she's from New York. And Lucy says, I would love to go to New York. And, Evie says, oh, yeah, you definitely can. I would take you. I think you would really love New York, and I'll show you all of the great things about New York. And Lucy, like she smiles and sparkles as if she's like a kid, and she's just so happy that Evie even invited her to New York, which is, that's weird. So some time goes by, and Evie's standing with Lucy, Victoria, and her cousin Oliver. And the final guest in the host comes out, and that is Walt. And he immediately goes towards Evie, and he basically demands her to put her drink down and said, that's enough drinking, right? So he tells her, like, it's customary for me to have the first dance, and I want you to dance with me. So Evie says, look, I can't dance, and that's probably not how Black said. The only dance I can do is like, the two step. So maybe she can't dance, Anywho, she goes and she dances with Walt, and it's a really sweet type of dance, I guess. So kind of meanwhile, Oliver and Victoria, they're talking, and Victoria says, I guess I can share out a congratulations to you because I thought the Alexander family would have dried out by now. So little does Evie know that these two are kind of all behind this big event that's going to be happening this weekend that we all will know about soon. And then they have a toast, and Oliver is the biggest evil person ever that y'all gonna find out. So after Evie and Walt have their first dance, they decide to sneak away from the ball and walk towards Walter's art studio. While Evie and Walt are walking, it's kind of mysterious. The atmosphere is definitely mysterious. It seems like someone is kind of like watching them or trying to follow them. And something that they mention, or Evie mentioned, is, are there wolves in England? And Walt says, we haven't. He looks in the camera, right? And he said, we haven't had wolves in England in 1400, 400 years. So I do have something to say about this pertaining the wolves, because what they called vampires back in the day, like it's like the Nosferatu or something like that. I know I'm pronouncing this wrong, but these are animalistic beings who kind of look like animals, but they drink human blood. And what's funny about it is when we saw him and Victoria and Lucy change, they look like vampires because of the teeth, but because of the claws and stuff, they didn't look like that. So they look like, werewolves. So anywho, the other thing about this, I guess I can kind of mention is, no, we're not gonna mention that. But if y'all into conspiracy theories and history, combine those two, and you got what you need to get from that. So, Walt and Evie are now at the art studio, and Evie is immediately impressed by everything in this art studio. They begin to learn more about each other, and Walt asks about her life in New York and her family. And Evie asks the same thing about Walt. And Evie kind of makes a joke saying that Dickinson will have a field day because they're both orphans, basically. And Walt replies and says that, Dickinson wouldn't write a story about me because Walt feels like he ain't, ish. But Evie said that's just a cover up because, Evie feels like he's a stand up guy simply because he apologized to her um, twice. He kind of made her feel very welcoming, and he cares a lot about people, apparently, and he's accomplished a lot in his young age. And she kind of mentions that, you got to look at it my way. You have all this money at your young age and you didn't spend it on like crack, basically, which I guess her coming from New York, she probably sees that a lot. Like, and if you guys watch You, I can definitely understand what she's talking about. Well, it seems like when people have money and they come from a class, like a class above like poverty or whatever, and middle class or whatever, they're rich, right? They don't work for anything, so they spend their parents' money on stupid crap and cover up their evil things that they do. And he didn't do that we know of. So, let's see what else I want to talk about. Walt then says that the money is not everything, to which Evie says that that's only what rich people says, which I do agree with because you know what? Yeah, if I had all the money, I would, even if I was sad, I pretend to be happy because I got money in my face. But at the same time, it's like when you put on somebody else's shoes, you just never know how lonely that can get. And clearly, like throughout the movie, we can see how lonely Walt truly is. So, the fireworks happen, and Evie and Walt, they lean into each other and they kiss. Okay. Anywho, so Evie is back in her room after the ball is over, and she's, sleeping, but then she awakes because there's some dark force in her room that is pretty much playing with her. And I'm gonna be real with y'all. We just wanted to say it. This is Victoria being an a-hole. She just pretty much wants to like play a game on her, and you'll know why towards the end of the movie or the end of the presentation. So Ebius is so frightened, she don't know what's going on. So she hides underneath the bed, and then the nasty claw of a hand grabs her and tries to grab her. And then on the other side, Walt is trying pulls Evie out of the bed and it says, like, what's going on? Evie knocks into a the table that has like a glass on it and also a candle that she ends up breaking. And like I'm just gonna tell you guys this one part of the symbolism, I guess, in this movie or movie. Um, the candle is kind of like it's an older candle. And if you guys watch any like older movies from like a long time ago, the candle kind of is made on this like metal piece that kind of looks like a dang on sword. Like if you like, it can be used as a weapon basically. So that was like a huge clue, and I felt like Mrs. Swift kept that candle in the room so she can try to protect Evie. And if looking at the characteristics of Mrs. Swift, she's definitely trying to look out for Evie. So after this happens and Mrs. Swift gives Evie some tea, she's still really like a wreck and she's very scared. So she asks Walt, can he stay in a room with her? And he says yes. I'm gonna be real with you. Um, I would have never gone to somebody's house. Yeah, that's a lie. But I wouldn't have done that. Shania now, or Imani, that's one of my other names. But the Imani now at my age, I would have never gone to somebody's house I do not know, because you don't know them. Like they can be crazy. So, anywho, they start to talk to each other and everything. And Evie says, like, if you talk to me, it's gonna help me sleep better at night. And yeah, they start to talk, and Evie and Walt are in bed, and Evie asks if Walt can kind of talk. Wait, I'm trying to like talk so I can kind of tell y'all what's going on here. So Evie is asking, well, Walt is asking Evie about her life, what she truly wants in her life, and Evie gives him this spiel about what she wants in her life. And now she does mention, like, hey, I'm an artist. I want to go to school to get my MFA, which is really great accomplishments, especially for her at her age. She doesn't have no kids. She ain't married. She ain't tied down to nobody. Those are really true and great ambitions, honestly. So she says that, scratch all of that. I really want to belong. I really want to she wants to live a stress-free life, what she said. And she just wants to go with the flow. Like, she doesn't want to live by the book, basically, right? So she asks Walt, what does he truly want in his life? And Walt says he wants someone to accept him for who he is. He does not want to live in his vain life. And like, we see Walt, he is built very well. He's very handsome. He has money, stuff like that. Um, he has nice eyes. But okay, look, this is his characteristics. And like, when we know about characters like this and like, mythology and stuff like that, people like him in all the movies I've ever watched, they are, they appear beautiful until people see that beast in them. And that's pretty much what he wants people to see. He wants people to see the beast in him because he doesn't want to hide behind his makeup, basically, right? So while he's saying this stuff, Evie is like sound asleep, and I thought that he would like look at her a certain way, like, oh my gosh, she rude as hell. But he didn't do that. He just kind of left and like gave her a letter that basically said that, you look so peaceful when you're sleeping, and I'll see you later. This a really sweet guy and everything like that. So while Evie is reading the letter that Walt gave her in the morning, Victoria and Lucy kind of bust into her like suite and tell her, like, look, get ready. We're having a spa day. And yeah, they went to the location, which is kind of like on the manor, right? So Lucy and Evie, they're having a conversation about marriage and family. And Lucy kind of questions Evie about if she wants to get married. What does she think about wanting a sister and this and that and the third? And Evie says, look, I'm independent. I'm not really worried about no marriage. I'm kind of wanting to do my own thing. And, Victoria kind of does a smirky thing like, well, you need to think about that. And like, Lucy kind of says the same thing. And like, Evie she really doesn't know what's going on in this entire movie. And I will say I kind of like that about this movie because it kind of builds up that suspense. So, Lucy kind of continues to speak to Evie saying like, hey, blah, blah, blah about the sisterhood, this and that. And then Victoria says, you don't need to kiss her arse, and Evie says, you know what? I've always wanted a sister, and pretty much said, don't worry about Victoria because she's just mean, right? So Victoria, she kind of psychs Evie out and says, do you even know who you're talking about? Because you're getting really close to Walt, but you know nothing about his past. You don't know what he's up to. Maybe you need to do a little bit of snooping. So I did not mention this in my, further on in my presentation, but this is definitely that vocal point that like turned the movie around because Evie gets so upset and she was just kind of going back and forth saying, you know what, that doesn't matter to me. That doesn't matter to me. Like, what's in his heart, blah, 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 like that, right? So, while the nail technician is doing Evie's hands and everything, trying to make sure she looks presentable, like, and also Lucy looks presentable, right? Um, Evie is just so upset at Victoria, so she just immediately jumps off from the table, and like the nail technician snips Evie's hand, so she starts bleeding. And Victoria, weird ass, she gets out of the like the little hot tub that she's in, and she like grabs Evie's finger and sucks the blood out of her finger. And I hope this is not no trigger for none of y'all, but this movie is a horror movie, okay? I'm sorry, but I had to review it. So, anywho, um, Evie says, you're weird. Like, what's wrong with you? So she kind of has that in the back of her head that what Victoria said, like, you need to do some snooping, right? So Evie, she stumbles upon Walt's library, and she's in Walt's library, and she's just looking around until she like drops something off of his table, and then she realizes that this dude been spying on her the whole time. And for me, I'm just trying to figure out when exactly did he start snooping, because he had all of her Facebook shit. I mean, oh, sorry. I'm sorry for cursing, but he had all of her Facebook information, like where she went to school, how she graduated, her mom, her dad, like her best friend, like what she likes and what she dislikes, and all this information. And we see another clip where Evie is like packing up her bag and she's about to leave. So while she's packing up her belongings, Walt kind of comes in and saying, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just... So, okay, this part is funny to me. But Walter says, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? So she threw all them damn papers on the floor. And Walt says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, it seemed like he trying to, like, muster up something in his head. Like, what can I tell her? What can I tell her? So he basically said, he used that white boy privilege crap basically to say, you know what, Evie, I thought you were gonna be an opportunist. I thought you was he basically was trying to say, I thought you was gonna steal all this crap up in my house. And I'm just like, really? You gonna really tell her that? You gonna really invite this woman miles and miles away from New York, and you think she gonna steal TVs from England to go ship back to New York? Like, what are you talking about? So after they kind of make up, they made up, quote, air quotes, they did what adults do. And what's interesting about this is couples kind of do that, and it's kind of toxic. Y'all just had like an argument about something that's like really serious. This dude is like hella like spying on you, and like he manipulates you into making up, right? So everybody got butterflies, especially Evie, because like Walt clearly did this to like kind of ease her to staying and all this other stuff. So Evie kind of they after they make up, they kind of start talking, and Walt kind of mentions like, hey, you want certain things in your life, and he kind of blurts out, okay, let's get married. And because she's just so like and this happy love moment with him, she kind of was like taken back by him saying like marriage, and she was like, I don't want no shotgun wedding. And I was like, facts. But I mean, I can like agree with her too much because I got married in the courthouse. But I will say this, he kind of forced her to say yes. So, Evie said yes. Walt was being extremely like excited with that answer. He springs out of bed and says, look, I have this beautiful gown for you to wear, and I'll see you in a little while. So Evie replies and say, Walt, I'm kidding, right? So he looks at her like, yeah, okay, you kidding, right? Okay. So we see the next scene, and they are at the dinner table, and like all the guests are there, and Evie just kind of walks in with the butterflies she's had because she had a real great night, right? So Evie comes to the table. She looks just beautiful in this like bird dress. Okay, the dress is not cute to me. Like, I do not like the dress. She like a big ass bird, and she's so pretty, but the dress just didn't fit. So I guess, and I'm assuming that the reason why he gave her this big bird dress, it's because of his true form. Like, he's more animalistic in his true form, so he wanted her to kind of match that, right? So she gets to the table and she kind of looks around, and like, the viewers watching this movie, we looking at this table and the food looks disgusting. There's like quail birds that are barely got any meat on them. Like the food and the side dishes doesn't even match what you'll see at a normal wedding, right? So Evie's looking around and she's just like so happy to be in Walt's presence, and I don't blame her. But the thing is, this ain't what this is not what she came here for, okay? Because she looks around and she's like, where is the bride and groom? And that's when the whole movie flipped on everybody's head, right? So Evie is just like looking around and it looks like she's about to cry, like, and then Walt is like talking and saying, look, I don't know if you slow, but it's clear as day that you are my bride, right? So she, Walter tells the butler to bring out the refreshments. So this man bring out the maid number one, and he offs her, and like all these, like Lucy and Walter and Victoria are just drinking the woman dry, right? Um right. So after this is happening, Evie is just very, very like scared. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm like doing this correctly, because like sometimes I'm talking over the presentation like slide that I'm telling y'all. So Evie is really taken aback. She kind of tells like, Walt, like, what are you talking about? Like, we're not, married, whatever. So when Evie kind of sees what he does to the maid, she immediately runs out of that room. She's trying to run out, and like you see Mrs. Swift on the other side, and she's just crying out for Evie, and she's just so sad for her. And then you see Walt dusty ass. Sorry, he comes, and he ain't Walt no more. He a ugly beast, and he don't look the same. Like, you see his veins and you see his real long nails, and he ain't even attractive no more. He's just so demanding. And you know what's the funny part about all of this? The man was already demanding like that, but because he was fine, ain't nobody even say it. It wasn't even like a big part of the movie, but I noticed how demanding he was with everybody around him, and especially Evie. But because he was fine, she was like, okay, bet. Because let's be real, if he was ugly, she would have been giving him all types of, bees and this and that and the third. Because at the end of the day, any woman would do that with a man who didn't look like Walt. So, anywho, Walt saying, look, you're embarrassing me. What are you doing? Like, you need to go sit down. So, Walt, he starts to kind of like tell everybody around the table, also Evie, because Evie's trying to figure out where she belongs in this entire, situation. So Evie looks at her cousin Oliver, and she's just so hurt by him because he's the one who did all this crap to her. Evie is forced to sit back down, and she learns the true history of Walter DeVille. And in the past, he made a pact with the three families, and the Alexander family happens to be one of the family members he made a pact with, who could not fulfill Walter's demands of having a third wife, because that's when he is more powerful, when he has three wives. And if you guys are into like mythology and stuff, the importance of numbers, especially the number 3 or the number 7 or the number 13, or stuff like that. But the number 3 signifies that that's power, that's unity. And he needed somebody from the Alexander bloodline, because they had a rare bloodline that matched well for Walt, and for him to have the powers that he needed to have. So after this happens, and kind of Walt says, look, we're married. When you consume my blood and I consume yours, we are going to be very powerful. You'll have all the powers and this and that and the third. So there is some type of initiation that Victoria and Lucy puts Evie through. And Lucy's just really sweet. She's trying to calm Evie down. So yeah, I'm talking over my presentation, but basically Evie is kind of picked up in this chair with all the butlers and everything, and she's put downstairs in the parlor, like basement thing, with Victoria and Lucy, and they're doing this initiation thing for her. And basically, what happens is they put her in a coffin, and Victoria kind of explains that, look, I was the one messing with you in your room. And Lucy says, look, calm down, we're gonna be sisters. And Lucy is a really sweetheart, like really sweet. And I'm gonna be real, she looks so young. She looks younger than Evie. And I feel like, because she, like, they also mentioned that Victoria has been with Walt for 100 years, and Lucy has only been with Walt for no, she's been with Walt for Lucy's been with Walt for 100 years, and Victoria has been with Walt for about 500 years. And when you see how her name is spelled, a lot of times people don't spell Victoria with a K, right? They don't do that. I normally see it with a C, right? So they leave Evie in this, coffin, this screaming like bloody murder. And it's the morning time, and Mrs. Swift finds Evie, and she breaks her out of the coffin. So they start to run, and Mrs. Swift is just telling her, like, hey, you need to run out of here, out of this manor, and run all the way out of England until you're until you're on a plane out of England. Do not look back and never come here again. And she says this because of her rare bloodline. They would hunt this woman down if she did not do what she did on the next slide, right? So Mrs. Swift says, like, I knew your grandmother and we were really great friends, and she couldn't handle the stress of what was going on in the manor, so she left. She offed herself, right? So anywho, Evie is now like running and running and running out, trying to get out of the manor, but she is now stuck. So she hides in the ice box, or the ice room outside, where she sees pretty much all of the maids are gone. Like, there's only one maid that is still left on, but all the maids are like gone. And meanwhile, the butler offs Mrs. Swift, and he arrives with Mrs. Swift at the ice room. Evie's in there. She's hiding, but Mrs. Swift is kind of placed underneath her, and then her blood kind of goes on Evie, so she makes a sound. I don't know why she did that, but she made a sound, and like the butler did hear her, but because she was really tricky and sneaky, she got out of that ice parlor and locked that stupid man in there. And I was just so happy for her and rooting for her. And I was just like, yes, 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 yes. So she runs and runs and runs until it's nighttime, and she ends up in this village. And if y'all watch old vampire movies, this is kind of what that movie kind of reminds me of. Like, what the Strigoi is or whatever. It's like another form of a vampire. In Transylvania, they had like this, like in the movies of the vampires, they had like a village, and all the village people knew what was going on with like the king in Transylvania. He was a vampire eating the blood and this and that, but they protected him so they can kind of have their own situations and like have their own families safe and everything. And that's essentially what this movie is saying. So Evie ends up in this village, and she sees this elderly couple, and this elderly couple, they don't want to let her in. They're saying, hey, we don't have money, like, get out of here, right? So she's like begging for help and begging for help, and she doesn't even realize that she's going back into the DeVille's care, because these elderly people were actually the ones who were protecting Walter and Walter's manor. So they're like, hey, look, we got homegirl here, like, y'all gonna have to come get her. So while she's on the phone, while the older woman's husband's on the phone, Evie realized she messes up because she sees them at the manor with Walter. And she's immediately freaking out, and they're telling her, like, drink the caramel tea, drink the caramel tea. And that tea pretty much knocks you out, but I felt like they like made it strong enough to knock her out. But she said, look, she don't want to drink it. So she like tastes the cup and she lips it on to the elderly man's face. And then his wife actually grabs another statue and like hits Evie in the head. So then the next scene we see Walter. You see Walter. And he's clearly there, right? And he's just really upset at Evie, saying like, hey, I was trying to do all this stuff for you. I was doing all this for you, and you gonna do this to me? You gonna run away from me when I didn't tell you what I was doing and I was sneaky? And for me, like, this part didn't make no sense to me, because what? And you're gonna learn one thing about him, and you'll know his age. Now he looked like he about 28, maybe 30, but you gonna know his age like towards the end of this presentation, because he gonna tell you exactly who he is. And he was going back and forth with Evie, and Evie was just kind of listening to him, and he was just kind of saying, look, he turned on some music and he was just like, yo, let me tell you about myself. So he says basically that people have called him like, look, I don't know how to pronounce these words, and I definitely have butchered them, but it's one of them like the Nashotu, and then the other one is the Stogi or whatever, but they're like some type of vampires. That's what some European people have called vampires back in the day. They've also called him the son of the dragon, which is definitely my favorite term to describe a vampire, because when you look at a dragon, they definitely kind of look at that. And like, I'm really into like mythology and stuff, but when you look at a dragon and you look at like a vampire, their teeth are the same. They do have like a lot of power. And like, I watched something where a dragon was literally talking, he shape shift, and he literally like he was talking to you, and he did mind tricks on you, and it was a really good, a really really good show. It was actually on Netflix. So I think that was a really good and a really good concept to call a vampire, I guess. So anywho, Walt kind of says something about them. He says a lot of classist and racist things to her. And when I mean by racist, people in his stature and his wealth, they don't realize that some of the stuff that they're saying, it could be a little bit racist. So he basically said, look, girl, I gave you an opportunity. It's a step up from you living in squalor in New York. And when somebody say that to you, what would you as a person say? Especially a person of color who seen both your parents, your white mother and your black father, work just to take care of you. What would you say about that, right? So yeah, he says all this stuff and says like, Evie kind of mentions like, I didn't say or agree to marry you. He was like, yes, you did say that when we was making up, and you said yes, and even though it wasn't written on paper, you still said yes, I got you. So that's basically how that went. So the maid starts shaking and stuff. Like, when the last maid who dies or whatever, or the second to last maid that dies, she starts to shake, and then the Walt drains her dry too. So we're going to the next presentation slide. So the wedding day arrives, and Evie is escorted by her great grandfather down the aisle. Evie kind of has this type of like realization that, look, if I marry this dude, I'm gonna have his powers. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is kill him. Oh, sorry. Oh God, I'm not supposed to say that. Oh my God. Yeah, right. So anywho, she decides to kind of off the guy. So her grandfather, she takes him all the way to the altar, and I'm so glad that she didn't like do anything to him, because I'm just like, girl, you're gonna get found out, and like you're gonna get that power to back you up. So she ends up going to the altar. They say I do, and blah blah blah. So Evie and him, they exchange blood. And then Evie, she's like so strong now. She decides, you know what, I'm about to end all this. So she gets up on the altar, and like Walt thinks that, oh, she's gonna go straight to that maid. We got a maid in the bank now. We both gonna be powerful. It's gonna be happy. I'm gonna force you to love me like I tried to with your grandma. All this other stuff, right? He thought his life is gonna be completed, right? So Evie, like, she takes the maid, that last maid, out of the ropes that she was in, because she was kind of hanging up. And there's all these candles lit up in the church altar, right? So Evie this smacks all that crap down, and she's just like, okay, look, we're done. So she, like, in the beginning of the movie, when I was telling you all that the candle is kind of like a makeshift type of sword. So she grabs that sword after like everything's burning, all these people burning up or leaving the church. So she grabs the sword and she pierces Walter and into the chest, right? Which is, she thought that she offed him. So anywho, she runs out of there, and Victoria's is so mad. Like, Victoria's running after her saying, you ruined everything, this, like, trying to like harm her. So then Lucy's like really sweet, so she's just coming after Victoria, saying, don't hurt her, like she's our sister, and this and that and the third, like, don't hurt her and this and that. And then Evie kind of says, they kind of just all talking and not talking really. This Victoria's is really talking, and she's just trying to like beat up or try to harm Evie, basically, and Evie's doing the same thing. So then Lucy was just like, no, I had enough of you trying to boss me around, because Victoria was literally trying to tell Lucy, like, look, you're beneath me, like you're nothing, you're kind of slow. Like, she basically says that to her. And Victoria, she is pushed because Lucy had enough of her crap. So, all three of the ladies are now strong, plus Walt, because it's three of them complete the spell or whatever. So Lucy grabs her strength and then pierces herself in Victoria with one of Walt's like crazy sculptures, and they're both gone now, which is like completely crazy, because I don't think Lucy wanted to do that, but at the same time, she's just probably just like, she did mention something about being free, like finally being free from Victoria, right? So anywho, that scene happens. Oh, sorry. And now we have that I think I'm a slide. Anywho, I can just talk about it because I've been talking through it without really looking at the slides anyway. But the butler comes out of nowhere, and he basically was using those racist and classist remarks with Evie again, saying, you're nothing, you're pretty much like a sewer rat, basically, is what he equated her to, and said that he really doesn't know why Walt wanted to choose her, because she doesn't fit the bill in the butler's eyes or whatever. And she finally kind of says, she kind of takes control of the situation with the butler. She offs the butler, and she mentions to him, like, look, you're an a-hole. So he's gone. So she's finally leaving this manor. But look, and lo behold, we got the little crybaby Walt. And I call him this because of the stuff that he says about women is just disgusting. He basically said that women are like, modern women are like so hard to control, basically. And he's saying, like, they're not, pretty much saying that modern women ain't worth a damn, right? And he's like, I was trying to give you an opportunity. I was trying to help you. You basically live like a sewer rat. Like, he said, you were gonna have money, you were gonna have power, you were gonna have a family, and you pretty much trashed all of this away. So she was like, yeah, whatever, Walt. And like, this burns the dude in a fire, and then like the entire like manor just burns down. So 2 weeks later, Lucy and Victoria, they're gone, right? Blah blah blah. Grace and Grace and Evie, they're in England again, and they are standing right outside across the street from the Alexander family um like business. And one thing I forgot to mention to you all, the reason why the Alexander family, not only because they had a rare bloodline, they were intrigued by Walt DeVille, it was also because they sold him houses. And Lucy's family took care of their finances, and then Victoria's family was like their lawyers and stuff. So they pretty much, those three families protected them, and that's why they had to give off, those two families or three families had to give off the women to marry Walt. So anywho, Oliver, they're, Gracie and Evie, they are at Oliver's family's like real estate company, and they about to get their revenge because Oliver was like a piece of crap, because if he literally, he could have prevented all of this crap, but because he's just so money hungry and he's just so privileged, he's just like, okay, whatever, like I got a black cousin, I don't care, like I'll just, basically he was gonna like end her life. And but the thing is, they kind of seen it as like you're gaining something. So because of like their ways and how they grew up, and they're seeing like people of color, they probably thought, well, it's a step up from living like a sewer rat in like, New York, and that's pretty much how they thought about her. And I feel like um again, if they did not have this stuff going on in England and they had their power, they wouldn't have cared about that girl. Like again, like Oliver literally said she was a scandal. Like nobody cared about her. Like what? So even the butler mentions like, oh, I should have I should have offed that baby and that black footman like years ago. Like who say stuff like that? That's messed up. So anywho, we're gonna talk about the symbolism in the movie. So, number one, Emily, Evie's great grandmother, decides to end herself because she cannot live with the fact that she's marrying a monster, which, that makes sense. So she grabs a figurine of a veiled lady and a piano and ties it to a banister, and she's now gone. And to me, I feel like if the figurine kind of represents a woman who's just really lost and lonely, although she is, being married, she doesn't want to be in her marriage. It also represents her hiding, like she's just covering her face from all the evil that she sees, and she's aware that that evil's there, but she doesn't want to live with it. Then number two, there's a beautiful portrait of a black, dark skinned woman with her heads covering her face with a yellow background. And to me, yellow means warning. So when you look at this woman in the beginning of the scene where you see Evie and Grace working, this black lady, very dark skinned black woman at this DNA event, she is covering her face, and all you see is all these white people around, and they're trying to find any like foolish woman, preferably somebody with color, because they maybe their DNA is different from the standard white DNA or whatever, and they're just trying to trap any like foolish woman to doing like evil stuff with them. I feel like throughout that scene, like they may have been like vampires too. And I only say that because like a lot of them, they weren't even eating the food there. Like they were just like kind of drinking, and like I know personally from like watching a lot of vampire movies, they never ate, but they drank hell of a lot. Like it was crazy. So I just felt like that was just a warning. And this is warning her, like, do not take this test, because they just want goofy people to do all their evil work. And like when you look at villains, monsters, like vampires and stuff like that, they do like prey on like the weaker minded or the weaker you know the weaker, like, yeah, look, hey, they're weak, they're preying on them. That's all y'all gotta know, because I just literally forgot what the heck I was gonna say. Anywho, The third thing that I want to mention is when Grace mentions that leopards don't change their spots. And this is a very great clue in this entire movie because that's very, very true. Why all of a sudden a whole bunch of rich white men, predominantly rich white men from England, all of a sudden care about this biracial girl? um Even though she's like a scandal, like her grandmother and like the Blackfoot men and this and that, that was a whole scandal. Why would they all of a sudden care about her now? And the thing is, they never cared about her. They just wanted that money. They just wanted to keep their own power. They wanted to make sure that they were continued to be on top, and that's just how that was. So throughout the movie, they gave Evie hints of their true intentions, but the main like clue was pretty much the invite to the wedding, and that was like a dead giveaway. And like that wedding was her wedding, but she clearly didn't know that. Like that was pretty much like the biggest symbolism or clue in an entire movie. So, number five, Walt throughout this movie hints that his manor and all his belongings kind of belong to her. Like they're on one team, they're considered one. Anything of his is hers, basically. So then, the maids that appeared in this movie, they were numbered 1 through 5. A lot of them were pretty much drained, because vampires they drink blood, but basically they were pretty much damned since they got there. Um, so, number 7, the painting of the young woman that was hanging up in her room was kind of like a warning, too. And Evie at the time didn't know that that was her grandmother, but the grandmother just seemed so unhappy and sad. And it was just like when Evie's looking at that painting, it's like she's looking at herself because she's pretty much in that same situation with her grandmother. And like I thought it was just interesting that when in the beginning of the movie, Evie's mother said, "You're stronger than what you believe." I felt like her mom and also her great grandmother kind of giving her those warning signs and like that protection really helped her in this movie. So number 8, so many boys, I thought we were done for it. And this is what the great grandfather said. Um, so he pretty much knew everything what was going on, and they pretty much tricked Evie because he wanted his family to keep that wealth. And then number 9, Victoria says to Oliver, "I guess a congratulation goes out to you because I thought that the Alexander family would have dried out by now." So all of the guests are pretty much at the wedding. So yeah, everybody at the wedding knows what's going on. They know exactly who's getting married, which is Walt and Evie. So number 10, Walt says he wants someone to accept him for who he was. And that is the monster side of him, not the vain guy with all the money, not the handsome guy who gets all the ladies, this and that and the third. Just, the monster. He doesn't want to put on his makeup. He doesn't want to look like, he doesn't want to look like what everybody sees. He wants people to see his true form, like the pretty much Beauty and the Beast. Like this entire movie was giving me Beauty and the Beast vibes. And like, to be honest, like we're gonna be real, obviously, like the Beauty and the Beast, I don't think he was really a vampire, but like at the end of the day, because they called him like the son of the dragon or the Shrogi, those beings they look like animals, but they drink blood. And that is basically what Walt was in this movie. And he loved that part of him. And when we watch Beauty and the Beast, it's kind of like that. Anywho, so number 11, which is like my favorite type of um symbolism in the movie, is the picture of the dragon who is conquering the Dark Knight. And this is where Walt got his powers because this is another term that they use to describe vampires, like the son of dragons. And I really, really love that mythology, but like honestly, like that's kind of true. Technically, like he was like the better being and he got what he wanted to. He can manipulate simple-minded humans. He can use his looks to get whatever he wants. He can use his money to get whatever he wants, and that's what he does. So my likes and dislikes. I thought it was a decent story. I thought that it was a really attractive cast. Even like the older, like the butler wasn't like too ugly. I felt like everybody in the cast looked the part, and I felt like all the different characters they looked the part. Like they looked like everyday people. Like let's take the vampire crap out. Like mostly the racism and the classist stuff is going to be there and it's going to be apparent, right? I felt like it was a really intriguing. It was really intriguing throughout the movie. I really liked that, and I felt like it was a lot of great imagery and symbolism in the movie, and like that was really like the things that I really enjoyed in the movie. I didn't mention, but I really enjoyed Evie's role. I felt like she was really strong-willed. I felt like she was just really I just really enjoyed that about her. And most of the time, I don't know if I noticed this, but like most of the time when I see light skinned black women on things, they seem to have more power to like control themselves and like, stand up for themselves. Now, sometimes you can see that with dark skinned people, I guess, dark skinned black women. But I feel like the past things I've been watching is just like the dark skinned women are like they always play the role where they're quiet and like always like picked on. So I kind of really like to see that she had a voice, and I would like to see black women having voiced like dark skinned black women having voices sticking up for like evil crap, racist crap, so they can protect themselves. Because most of the time when you do see that, it's like, you know, I really don't talk about it, but it's like some like weird, like terrible. It's like a Tyler Perry movie, and it's like I don't, we don't want to see that. We want to see like more roles where like, dark skinned women have the opportunity to kind of express how they feel when it comes to like any type of discrimination and any type of like weird issues or whatever. So yeah, I really like Evie's role. Anywho, my dislikes is like the classist remarks towards Evie, because I felt like they didn't like, especially Walt. Walt didn't see her for just being Evie. He saw her and saw like a money tag with her. It's like, so he bought her stuff. He bought her beautiful dresses. He kind of made his studio. He made one of his rooms in his house into a studio just to kind of lure her in, and like he just kind of just swung money at her all the time. And like this guy is like older than 1925, but for him everybody was interested in his money, and he mentioned it several times in this movie too. He's saying like, trying to make sure she's not an opportunist and stuff like that. Like that stuff is like classist remarks, and like you really don't want to be in that. Like when you're rich and stuff, you definitely don't want to have that mindset that you're better than somebody. And like that's pretty much how he was. And like I felt like when you got money, you gotta move differently. You have to move differently when you got money. You feel me? And like for him, like just to continue to say that about her, I was like, are you kidding me? And because she didn't come from family, like she didn't have nobody. She didn't have like the typical black uncle or black cousins to kind of defend her. She didn't have nobody. Like both her parents passed, and then like she ends up with her white side of the family who are completely crazy and they're users. So I wish I could have seen her kind of gain some type of like monetary value from this movie. And I wanted to see her kick Oliver's arse. Like I want to see that, because he was the reason why she was in this mess to begin with. Like that whole entire DNA like event, that was pretty much telling us, and if y'all believe in conspiracy theories, do not take DNA tests, because you won't end up in situations like this. That's basically what they telling you. But they put the little vampires and all this little woolly crazy stuff in it. But look, that DNA test was basically used so they can kind of like, if this was a real life situation, to alter whatever bloodline from a random black person, because this actually happened in American history. There's a black lady like that Oprah did a movie on. I forget that lady's name. I think her name is maybe Roxanne or something, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on this, but look it up. But they literally took this woman her body when she passed away, and realized that her body was immune to like several cancers and diseases. So they took the cells out of her body to make freaking medicines with it. And like, we not going to act like that stuff don't be happening, because it does. Okay. And that's basically what this movie was trying to, hint at. But they put the little vampires and a little hot guy in there to kind of make you not think. But I mean, that's kind of what I was getting from it. And then Grace, I really wish that she was more in this movie. I wish she had more parts in this movie, because I really liked her character. I think she had a lot of sense. And to be honest, like when I seen her and like some of the stuff that she said in this movie, it kind of gave me like Get Out vibes, because like she was trying to protect her best friend like often. But I will say with Evie, she wanted to stick up for herself with Grace too, because Grace mentions like, hey, why do I need to be your sidekick now? Because and then Evie said, because I'm always your sidekick. And I was like, bet, like that's dope, because at the end of the day, if y'all are friends, both of y'all need to be there for each other. Like, one friend can't just keep doing everything for one, and you don't do everything for the other friend. So Gracie greatly accepted her role and said, you know what, I'm going to help you anyway. So that was that. That was the movie. So I'm going to give this movie a 10 out of 10, and only because it was real good, and like the cast was really, yeah, I just really like looking at Walt in this movie, because I like his eyes and his cheekbones. Them things high, like high as heck. He might have some Native American blood somewhere, or whoever else have high cheekbones. But anywho, he just looked very, very nice. I really enjoyed Evie's role. Absolutely enjoyed her role. I loved how she stood up for herself and really got into action. She didn't sit there like thinking like, oh, what can I do? Like, no, she took action and did what she had to do. I like how everybody, like Mrs. Swift, was just helping her get out of this situation. Like they weren't just like letting her kind of go through the same fate as her grandmother. So I really like that we get to see a Black woman who is actually going to pursue her degree in arts, and not some, oh well, I'm gonna become a doctor or a lawyer, like those, like, basic stuff we see. Like, Black women are either like business women, they work in some type of like record label, or some stuff like that. But because like I'm a writer and a creative person and stuff like that, I thought that her having that role was pretty cool. And she said that she wanted to go get a MFA, and we all know that that's a master's in fine arts. Like you can do pretty much a lot of the different things with that. You can get and go into creative writing, you can go into arts or dancing, any type of media science. You can go into any type of thing for your MFA, and it's just a really great thing to have if you want to really get that skills and stuff like that. Because I will say, side note, it's great to have that talent, but to be able to go to school to kind of further work on your talent, and to kind of have professionals look at you and give you pointers, that makes the whole difference between having a talent and then further improving your talent by investing in yourself and getting a higher degree, right? Anywho, I really enjoyed the movie, and I want to thank you all for watching this very, very long video. This is my first movie review, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. But I'm going to see you all next week. It's probably going to be Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm going to be doing a weekly review just to let you guys know what I'm going to be reading. And then I'm going to also do a TV review or a K-drama that I was watching recently. So, anywho, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next week, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.